Good morning. This is Ron. It is Wednesday, August the 1st. Welcome to Story Time. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. And speaking to all you butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and don't be cool. That's what I want to tell you this morning. Don't be cool. Cool is a lefty kind of idea. The left likes code words. They like dog whistles. They like those kinds of things. They like to be hip, meaning inside. They like that whole idea that there's it's like a secret society, and only the initiated know or understand what's truly going on and understand the language and all that. And for years and decades, Republicans have been jealous. They want to be on the inside too. They want to be hip, just like the left. Don't. Don't do that. Don't be hip. Don't be cool because there's nothing cool about being hip. There's nothing cool about being a lefty. Um, and being cool basically means that you are a person that will let a lefty get away with whatever they want to get away with, up to and I suppose including murder. That's always what being cool means. That's what people would tell me when I was in school. Be cool. They were doing something they shouldn't be doing. They were smoking, kids that were smoking uh, after school, during school, whatever, stealing, whatever it is that they were doing that they shouldn't be doing, rules that they're breaking. And if I happen to come upon a scene where they're doing what they shouldn't be doing, it would be cool, be cool. And if people had told other folks, "Hey, Ron's cool," it meant that. It meant exactly that. He'll let you get away with anything. He's not going to go ahead and report you. He's not somebody that's going to be a stickler for the rules. And you can't be a conservative and ignore rules, ignore the law at the same time. It's one of those things where you got to make up your mind. If you're so fascinated with the affectation of the left, with being cool and talking in code words and dog whistles and things of that nature, then don't be a conservative. Go be a lefty. And that's if you're that way right now, then you are what is known as a rhino. You're a Republican in name only, or perhaps a sino or a conservative in name only. If you're going to call yourself a conservative but act like a lefty, being wanting to be cool and to be hip, and constantly trying to prove yourself to other people, you're a lefty. Go be a lefty. Join the Democrat Party. Vote left. Vote for Joe Biden, et cetera, et cetera. Get out. We don't need you. So um, because there's so many things on the left where they ruin people's lives in very subtle ways. One of them is the be cool thing. There's I don't know how many times in school that I got myself into a jam because I was cool, and the people that wanted me to be cool weren't there for me. It's be cool, don't say anything, and then the next thing you know, the teacher's pointing her finger at me. Hey, what's going on here? What are you doing? Or I'm in the principal's office trying to explain why it is I didn't bring whatever these miscreants were doing to the attention of the appropriate authorities. I'm in trouble. I'm on the hot seat. And do you think any of the kids that were asking me to be cool or telling me to be cool are there to help me out? Of course not. In some cases, they actually had the guts to testify against me. So don't be cool because you're going to be cool to them, but it's not going to be reciprocated. The folks that want you to allow them to get away with stuff are going to be only too happy to watch while you end up taking the gaff for their mistakes, for their wrongdoing. So, and again, it's really what you get when you get down to it. Being conservative is about being not only realistic, it's about being normal, a normal human being. The people on the left, culturally speaking, have lived their lives trying to defy normality or normalcy, trying to pretend it doesn't exist so that they can, again, act with impunity. And you can't. Every action has its consequences. So, again, don't be cool. If people are doing things that are wrong, you don't want to get involved by shielding them from the consequences of their actions. And that's basically what they're asking you to do. And that is immoral. It is always immoral for everybody to do that, to shield people from the consequences of their actions. Um, I remember also, and it sticks with you too, it becomes automated. People, after a while, don't have to tell you to be cool. They just expect it, and you just end up going along with it. I remember that I was when I was a Boy Scout, and we were in Catalina Island, and we were there for some kind of a jamboree. That was what it was, a Boy Scout jamboree at Catalina Island, and we're going to sleep in tents there and spend, I think, the weekend. And do Boy Scout things. I don't remember what all. I think we ended up. That was where we ended up. I did archery, and I did got to shoot a 22 and things of that nature, and it was actually kind of fun. But where we were one night, we had gone up to a high point, some rock cliff or whatever, and I don't know, look at the stars, to do something that had to do with nature. And so we're on a trail back to camp, and walking back to camp, and we had our flashlights and whatnot. And Santa Catalina is an island, and of course surrounded by water. And there's a port or a bay where a lot of people keep their boats. Okay, so slips, various slips, or well, actually, I think most of them were buoys of various sorts, and so you would tie up at a buoy rather than actually having all these slips like Marina del Rey. But anyways, we're on the trail walking down, and it's quite a distance, both in terms of altitude and in terms of yardage out to the bay. And so the guy in front of me, named Trent, it was basically, I guess, on a dare. He dared me to throw a rock and see if I can put it in the water down there, because it's quite a we were in junior high school, and that's quite a feat, for somebody our age to do. So and before we could even say yes or no, he picks up a rock, a good sized rock, and throws it. And gives it a good throw. And so then we keep going down the path, because we don't figure it's actually going to land in the water. Well, the next thing you know, about 2-3 seconds later, you hear kerthunk. Okay, not splash. And actually, what we figured we were going to hear it hitting other rocks and breaking up and whatnot. No, but kerthunk. And then somebody yells up at us, "Who threw that rock?" He had hit a boat. He had hit one of the boats in the harbor down there that was tied up at one of the buoys. So he's furious. So then when we get back down to camp, we have to now that we're assembled in a formation, and the scoutmasters are giving us grief about it and explaining how these people that have the boats, they pay rent, and if they didn't, if they wanted to, they could shut down the jamboree because they have a lot of influence and money and blah 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 blah. So they want to know who did it. Trent doesn't say anything. I don't say anything. Nobody says anything. And there's probably at least 3 or 4 of us that were in line that knew that Trent did it. Trent was standing right in front of me. So I knew that he threw the rock. Now, technically, I could say, well, I don't know that somebody else didn't also throw a rock, and that it was their rock that hit the boat instead of Trent's, But I did know he threw a rock, and his purpose was to see if he could land it in the bay. And so we ended up in a situation where each one of us was interrogated. They interrogated us one by one. Did you throw the rock? And if they said no, do you know who did it? And so everybody ended up saying no, including me. I lied. I lied to the scoutmaster about it. And why? Because it was ingrained in me to be cool. So it's one of those things where I erred. I made a mistake. There's no value in that, in being cool. Again, if they had turned around and somehow pointed the finger at me and said I was the one that did it or was complicit, Trent wouldn't have come to my defense. Trent wouldn't have stood up and said, "Excuse me, Ron didn't do it. I did it." No, he would just go, "Whew, I'm off the hook." And then he might say something to me later about, "Gee, I'm sorry it worked out like that." But that's the whole thing about being cool, is all you end up doing is taking the gaff, for somebody else. Now, in this particular case, we all sort of got away with it, and the lie wasn't discovered. Nobody discovered that it was Trent that threw the rock, or threw a rock at least. And I don't remember what kind of punishment we got. And so that was kind of that. But the point of it is that it puts you in a position to where you're degrading your self-esteem. How do you look at yourself in the mirror if you're going to constantly do things like that? And that also becomes part of your identity, I suppose, where you figure my purpose in life is to be cool. That means to let people get away with whatever crap they want or need to get away with. So, uh, and it certainly wasn't a conservative thing to do. But at the time, when I was as a teenager, if you had asked me, I probably would have said that I was liberal, anyways. Not so much because I had thought about things, but because everybody else around me seemed to be expressing viewpoints and acting in ways that liberals were. When I was growing up, conservatives were considered squares, and at least uh, they'd make it out like conservatives were unpopular. And as a matter of fact, in reality, in a high school I went to, we had two guys that were absolute squares. I mean, they had military short haircuts. They wore a tie to school every day. They were two brothers, and the older one ended up getting a commission or an appointment to West Point to be in the Army to become an officer. And his younger brother was modeling himself after his older brother. And actually, when you look at this is perfectly conservative, absolutely fabulous. Older brother setting a positive role model for his younger brother. And I don't know what happened to the younger brother, whether or not he ever got an appointment, but I know the older brother did get an appointment to West Point. And as far as I know, he went ahead and finished and became a second lieutenant. But after that, I don't know what became of him exactly. So, but the point is, they were two of the squarest and most conservative, truly conservative people, and yet they were well liked. Everybody in the school liked them. There was nothing about them that was cool, and nobody expected them to act cool. And I think that's the surprising thing, that if you decide you may as a conservative think, I've got to be cool or I'm not going to be liked. I'm going to be unpopular. I'm going to end up isolated. I'm going to end up with no friends. Like my grandmother used to say, Ron, be a nice boy or you'll never have any friends. So, but it's BS. That's what the left wants you to think. They want to play with your mind like that. They want to get in your psyche and convince you that you have to do things the way they tell you to do them, or you're never going to have any friends. And it's crap. The thing is to stand on your values, be consistent, and you'll have all kinds of friends. People will like you and respect you for who you are, for your values. You will have a positive influence over others. Most importantly, you will have a positive influence over your family members. So when I come back, I'm going to be reading from a little clip from the Rush Limbaugh show. Okay, thank you very much. And so from the Rush Limbaugh app, which is taken from the Rush Limbaugh show and rushlimbaugh.com, a bunch of headlines I have to mention. Rush. All right, here are the things I've gone through the stack here, and these are the things that I really want to try to get to, or at least mention before the program ends today. So let me just do the headlines. I got to do a couple of things and come back to the phones. We'll see if we can get some of these in. The first is from Town Hall. Liberals called Trump mentally unfit. Now they're being treated for Trump anxiety disorder. This is about a story that therapists all over the country are busier than ever. Clients are coming in saying they literally have Trump anxiety disorder. They're having trouble functioning. These are the same people who said that Trump was mentally unfit. In addition, there is a story. Let's see. New study claims global warming will cause thousands more to commit suicide. So suicide rates are climbing because it's hot. Trump derangement syndrome. Times are tough and dangerous. I thought it was Trump driving people to suicide, but now it's climate change. Oh, you notice, by the way, it's summer, so it's not climate change, it's global warming. We're back to calling it global warming since it's summertime and it's hot. In the winter, when it's freezing, which it always is in winter, they call it climate change. But now that it's hot, it's global warming. And it's causing people to commit suicide. You remember the story, we had this not long ago, of a National Geographic photographer took a picture of a polar bear dying from climate change. That photographer has now admitted that the whole thing was fake and that she knew it was fake, and they purposely spread a fake story. She now admits, after it went viral, that the whole thing was false and a ruse. Another headline, U.S. and China said to seek to restart talks to defuse trade war. This is right on schedule. Everybody's saying Trump's blowing it with these tariffs, man. He's going to choke off the economy. The Fed is going to have to raise interest rates to stop the economy. It's all because of the trade deals and tariffs. No, it's all happening according to schedule. This is about Mnuchin talking to his counterpart with the Chi-Coms to avert the trade war while leveling the playing field. Paul Krugman at the New York Times is a Nobel laureate, a Nobel Prize winner for economics, and the guy doesn't know jack. This is the guy who predicted after Trump won the election that we're guaranteed to have one of the deepest depressions the country has ever seen. His latest column, Why One Quarter's Economic Growth Tells Us Nothing. 1 quarter at 4.1% GDP doesn't tell us anything, says Paul Krugman. Meanwhile, somebody who does know economics, Jamie Dimon, the chairman CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, says Trump's tax cut and deregulation have accelerated growth. He gives Trump total credit for this, says that Trump's tax cuts and deregulation efforts have helped out the U.S. economy. It can't be due to anything else. Companion story. Worker pay and benefits climbing at fastest pace in 10 years. Fastest pace in 10 years. I mean the economic news. Of course, the companion story to this, economic news, no longer matters in elections. Good economic news, bad economic news are no longer a factor in people's opinions of the president. Very convenient, isn't it? And so I wanted to mention, let me see what we got here. I wanted to mention this because and I'll give him some praise for, again, having some positives to share. Too often, the pundits think that in order to have a decent show, they have to talk about stories that are worrisome. Oh, well, Trump is being attacked in this way or that way. Oh, Republicans are being accused of this, that, or the other thing. Oh, my gosh, wring our hands. What are we going to do? Oh, it's awful. Let me try to counter this. Let me try to... No. Most of it is arbitrary. Ignore it. Concentrate on positive things. And there's plenty of positive things to talk about. So congratulations to Mr. Limbaugh for going ahead and putting some positives into his broadcast, particularly about Donald Trump. too many times he serves the left by perpetuating stereotypes and perpetuating myths about President Trump, and he should not be doing it. So, congratulations to him for doing this. It's not. I don't think it's the reason he's doing it. He's probably. I think it appears he's doing this, quoting all these headlines just to get things off of his plate, so to speak, rather than because he's doing it for principled, to be principled about it. So. Let's see. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and do when I come back some more of David Horowitz and the Black Book of the American Left. And thank you very much. And so David Horowitz, the Black Book of the American Left. He was a lefty, just like Tammy Bruce, and he's come around and become a conservative. He was born he called himself or referred to himself as a red diaper baby, and so born into a communist household, and basically presumed communism until he got into a situation with the Black Panthers, where one of the Panthers, murdered a lady he had recommended for a particular job. Her first name was Betty, and after that was helped to spur him to question everything that was going on in his life sociopolitically, and that's what helped him to make a break from the left and become conservative. And so that's where we're at now, that Betty's been murdered, and what's being done about it. Betty's children commissioned Hal Lipset, a private eye with connections to the left and to the Panthers themselves, who had employed him during Huey's trials, to investigate the case. Lipset confirmed the police conclusion that the Panthers had killed Betty. They also tried to get the case against the Panthers reopened, but without success. In the summer of 1977, unable to stomach exile any longer, Huey suddenly returned from Cuba. He was given a welcome by the local left, culminating in a ceremony and citizenship award presented by Democratic Assemblyman Tom Bates, husband of Berkeley's radical mayor, Lonnie Hancock. Not everyone was ready to turn a blind eye to the Panther reality. The minute Huey stepped off the plane, Alameda it says country, but I think they mean county, prosecutors began preparing to try him for the murder of Kathleen Smith, the 17-year-old prostitute he had killed 3 years earlier. Huey made preparations too. One day before the preliminary trial hearings were to begin in Oakland, squad member Flores Forbes and another Panther gunman tried to break into a house in the nearby city of Richmond, where they expected to find the prosecution's eyewitness, Crystal Gray, and assassinate her. But it was the wrong door, since Gray lived in an apartment in the back. The owner of the front apartment, a black bookkeeper, picked up her .38 and fired at the intruders. A gun battle ensued in which Forbes inadvertently killed his partner. Forbes was also wounded. Forbes fled the scene to seek the assistance of another Panther named Nelson Malloy, who was not a squad member and had only just joined the party. Fearing that the innocent Malloy might link him to the assassination attempt, Huey ordered a hit team to follow Malloy and Forbes to Las Vegas, where they had fled. The assassins found them and shot Malloy in the head and buried him in a shallow roadside grave in the Nevada desert. Miraculously, he was discovered by tourists who heard his moans and rescued him, although he remained paralyzed from the neck down for the rest of his life. Shortly after the Richmond incident, Elaine herself was gone. The squad members had never really accommodated themselves to being ruled by a woman. When Huey returned, tensions between Elaine and the squad reached a head, and Huey came down on the side of his gunman. Elaine left for Los Angeles, never to return. The botched assassination attempt on the prosecution witness, together with the headlines about Malloy's burial in the desert, destroyed the alliances that Elaine had so carefully built. Lionel Wilson and the head of Clorox, along with the other Oakland dignitaries, resigned from the Learning Center board. With its power diminished and its sinister reality in part revealed, the Panther Party had been declawed. I began to breathe more easily. But I was still unable to write or make public what I had come to know about the party and its role in Betty's murder. I had given some of the information to radical journalist Kate Coleman, who wrote a courageous story for the magazine New Times. It was called The Party's Over, and it helped speed the Panther decline. But I could not be a witness myself. I was no longer worried about being denounced by a racist or government agent by my friends on the left if I accused the Panthers of murdering Betty. During the 5 years since Betty's death, my politics had begun to change, but there remained a residue of physical fear. Huey was alive in Oakland and armed, and obviously crazy and dangerous. I now realized how powerless the law in fact was. Huey seemed untouchable. He had managed to beat his murder rap with the help of testimony by friends ready to perjure themselves for the cause. The pistol whipping case had been dropped, too. After being threatened and bribed, the tailor, Preston Callens, retracted his charges. For me, caution seemed to be the prudent course. Then, in 1980, an event took place that provided me with an occasion to relieve myself of a portion of my burden. It provided a story that was parallel in many respects to what I had been through. It would afford me the opportunity to speak about things that had been unspeakable until now. In May 1980, Faye Stender, an attorney who had defended Black Panther George Jackson, took her own life in Hong Kong. She had withdrawn to this remote city away from family and friends in order to kill herself after a member of Jackson's prison gang had shot and paralyzed her the year before. She had stayed alive just long enough to act as a witness for the prosecution in the trial of her assailant. Peter Collier and I wrote her story, calling it Requiem for a Radical. In it, we recounted the details of her life and death and were able to lift a part of the veil that had obscured the criminal underside of the Black Panther Party. We described the army of thugs that had been trained in the Santa Cruz Mountains to free Jackson from his San Quentin cell. We described the killing fields in those same mountains where the Panthers had buried the corpses of Fred Bennett and others who had violated their party codes. We were also able to write honestly about Jackson himself, whom the left had made into a romantic legend, and who, like Huey, was a criminal psychopath. Obscured by love letters Jackson had written in the book Soledad Brother, which Faye Stender had edited, was the murderer who had boasted of killing a dozen men in prison and whose revolutionary plan was to poison the water system of Chicago, where he had grown up. When our story appeared in New West magazine, I learned through mutual friends that Bert Schneider, Huey's Hollywood patron, was unhappy with the account Peter and I had written, although I sensed that Bert was aware of the party's criminal activities, including Betty's murder. I was not as afraid of him as I was of Huey, and I decided to go and see him. I did so on a principle taken from the Godfather movies, that you should get near to your enemies and find out what they have in mind for you. The Faye Stender story was not a direct hit on Huey or Bert, and their reactions might tell me something I needed to know. Perhaps the past was not as alive for them as I imagined. Perhaps I did not have so much to fear. Bert had an estate on a hill above Benedict Canyon in Beverly Hills. I called my name through the security gate and was admitted into the main house. Bert appeared wearing a bathrobe and in a quiet rage. He was angrier than I had ever seen him. "You endangered my life," he hissed at me. I didn't have the slightest idea what he was talking about. He directed me to a passage in our Faye Stender article about Jackson's attempted escape from San Quentin prison, an episode in which the Panther and his comrades slit the throats of 3 prison guards they had tied up before Jackson himself was killed. The abortive escape left a thicket of unanswered questions behind. Had Jackson been set up? If so, was it by the Cleaver faction of the Black Panther Party, or by Newton, fearful of Jackson's charismatic competition? Joe Durden Smith's book, Who Killed George Jackson, had described Bert as being in close contact with Huey during the escape attempt. Perhaps he was referring to that. Even so, I still could not understand why Bert was so agitated. I was already focusing, however, on something else Bert had said that had far greater significance for me. In defending his reaction to the article, he had admitted, "Huey isn't as angry as I am." It's the opening I was looking for. I told him I would like to see Huey, and a lunch was arranged. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it there, and for the time being, and we'll pick up where I left off next week. But I did want to say that all of this demonstrates that how the left really functions. They claim to have this, visions and of having a better world and of having these ideals. But the problem is, in order to really have any type of ideals and wanting a better world, you have to have a sense of right and wrong to begin with. And the left has none of that. The left is about might makes right, and the ends justify the means. You'll notice that in here he says, I went to go see this guy Bert about, but not to talk to him, not to clear the air, not to correct any misconceptions Bert might have had, but he quotes, but out of something from the Godfather movie, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. So it's a cynical power play kind of a situation. He's writing an article about the deaths of many people that were committed at the hands of the Black Panthers, but at the end of it, and he's writing this article as though he is, I guess, shocked, offended, morally outraged, or whatever, and yet at the end of the day, it comes out that he's really no better than they are. If that's his attitude, I'm going to go see somebody because it's a political move, So he's a guy, I guess, that'll get married to people because it will cement a relationship between his faction and some other faction, that kind of crap. And again, so it ends up that he's really no better or no different than the people that he's writing about. So, but to give him credit, at this particular point, he hasn't broken with the party. He's just questioning in this article some of the things that the left has done and the reasons they've supposedly done these items. So anyways, like I said, this is a fascinating book if you really, really want to get into and understand the left and how they think and how they operate. And again, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity always think that they know exactly what the left is doing, what they're thinking. And when you read David Horowitz, when you read Tammy Bruce or listen to Tammy Bruce's radio show, you realize that Trump et al. Have no clue, not even a little bit. So when I come back, a few jokes from the New York City Cab Drivers Joke Book. Thank you, thank you, thank you. A man goes into a bar and orders 12 shots of whiskey. No, I've already done that one. So let's see. What else do we got here? Okay, a man is walking down the street when he sees a man with 4 arms and antennae coming out of his head. He goes up to him and he says, "You're not from around here, are you?" "No," says the man with the antenna. "You know," says the man, "I don't think you're an American either. As a matter of fact, I don't think you're even from this planet." "Right again," says the man with the 4 arms. "I'm from Mars." "Well," says the man, "that's quite some configuration you got there with those 4 arms and those antennae and everything." Excuse me. "Thank you," the Martian answers. "We Martians all have them." "Well, that's just amazing," the man replies. "And say, what is that big round gold plate there in your chest? I've never seen that before. Do all Martians have those?" "Well, no," says the Martian. "Not the Goyim." I really don't understand what that means, but anyways. A traveling salesman is in a small town in the Midwest for 2 weeks when he really begins to miss his wife. After another 2 weeks, he just can't take it anymore, decides to visit the town brothel. He goes up to the madam and says, "Here's $100. Give me the worst blowjob in the house." "But sir," says the madam, "for $100, you don't have to settle for the worst blowjob. As a matter of fact, you could get the best." "No, no, no," says the man. "You don't understand. I'm not horny. I'm homesick." And on that note, we come to the end of another episode of Story Time. And until next time, thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day.